right, welcome back. If you just joined the show, it's today with John and Helen live from PlusTvAfrica. And Fumi tried to set the agenda earlier on. If you're just joining us, we say welcome to the show, by the way. Today we're talking about two issues. We're looking at the sickle cell disease, and then we're looking at how to keep our children engaged now that the holidays are here. So many of them are home. What must we do to keep them busy and out of trouble? So these are the two areas that we're focusing on, and we've got some brilliant friends of the house here in the studio, professionals in this field who will be helping us with answers and helping you at home, get some answers too. Joining us right now is Enitan Sophie. Oluwa. Okay. Oluwa. All of those judge should be on top. So I know the thing goes up and then comes out. Oluwa. Yes. So good to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and Sophie is a social and behavioral change pattern advocate for youths and adults. She's done this for so many years, and we are looking at this particular issue today because every year the day June 19th is set aside to create awareness, for this disease. And so Enitan is here to help us through all of the questions. Like I said before, she's an astute volunteer with over a decade of experience with non-profit organizations that are focused on assisting the needy, and she's involved in youth development, peer education, and mentoring vulnerable children, girls, and people with disabilities. She's also a Google and Lagos Business School certified digital business manager. She's passionate about adolescent reproductive health and gender issues. And she's a lot of so many things. She's also the pioneer, the founder of Martini Empowerment for Sustainable Impact Initiative, which is a non-profit organization, and you have done so well. Your CV is loaded. I won't go through all of it right now, but it's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm well done with the work.
All right.
Okay, so let's start with sickle cell awareness. We were talking about it before you came on, about how a lot of young people now are checking their genotype. Do you think the awareness on sickle cell has been effective?
I'll say yes, and I'll say no.
Okay.
So first of all, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Enitan Oluwa, like you said. I'm a reproductive health advocate. I work with young people, vulnerable young people. I'll say yes because, like you were saying, most of our parents got lucky. I would like to say that I got lucky. I am AA. I can bet you that my parents never checked. But we got lucky in my house, obviously, because my mom is AA, my dad is AA. What we had was people just taking risk. And a lot of myths of once you have a child with sickle cell, they just say, oh, these are Ogbanje, these are Abiku. They just kind of stigmatize all these children. The awareness is there now compared to that time, but it could still be better. I work with vulnerable people, I work with young people, and I can tell you that we are still far from the target. We are far from the target because a lot of these people do not check. People are experimenting with sex. Of course, to have a sickle cell carrier, it is through sex, through giving birth. People are experimenting with sex, and we keep pretending that this is not happening. When we begin to work towards having every birth by choice, not by chance, I feel like we were going to get there. Now, when we also talk about it, a lot of educated people probably have this access, this information. How about those in the rural community? How about those who do not have access to education and information, just like you and I? Even those who are educated, people still believe in magic. Some people will tell you that, oh, I know somebody who got a miracle. I like to call it. I like to call it magic, not miracle, because God is not an author of confusion. This is just simple arithmetic. 1 + 1 is going to give you 2. 1 + 1, yes, okay, biblically you could get all that, but you don't test God. God has given us the spirit of wisdom so that we can discern and do the right things. It will not come down to do what we should do for ourselves. So those people who do not have the information, who are just engaging in this, what do we do to help them? Because in the long run, it's going to affect us as a people. The economic importance and the kind of trauma people with sickle cell go through. Sure. Nobody deserves it.
Yeah, we're going to go into that details.
Okay, so when you were talking about the rural area, for example, I know, for example, that there are primary health cares in some of these rural areas. And if you ever go to a government hospital, one of the things they do is to create, I will commend, we like to condemn everything about our country, but for the state and government hospital that I've been to, there's always one awareness or the other. So when you get there, they're doing orientation on something. I've gone to, I think it was a state hospital where I had gone to see someone who had a surgery. And while we were waiting, this woman was giving us education on different birth control. Another time I went there, there's on the kind of food we should eat. So there's always some form of education. So is it possible at the primary health care level in different states? Because I know that every state will not be like, like Lagos or like Oshu or like Oyo or like even, let me say even like Ekiti. But if you go into some of the, should I say the interlands, how can we marry the primary health care is creating education and awareness about the sickle cell?
Okay, so in fairness, I was going to say that the state you talked about or the healthcare center you talked about, that must be Lagos. That is definitely Lagos, or let's say maybe Oshun, like you said, or one of these few states, but not everywhere. Primary health care is something that we are still struggling with in this country, because the truth is a lot of people would rather go to traditional birth attendants. We call them TBAs. People are more comfortable going there. And when you talk about the primary health care centers, how many people can afford the test? Our healthcare system in Nigeria is out of pocket. A lot of people cannot afford it. People would rather stop by the roadside and say, Yasidi, I'm having a headache, just give me this concussion, give me this. Because they even tell you that it is more effective than when you go to the hospital, they give you chalk or injection. They tell you it's more effective than what they do. It's the sole responsibility of primary healthcare. And I tell a lot of people that we put so much stress on our tertiary healthcare. When you go to LUT, you see a lot of people. Most of these cases are emergency. These are now crises that are turning to emergency. There are things that could have been better managed. If more people use the primary healthcare centers, a lot of things would have been done. And this is where NGOs come in. This is where advocates come in. What we do is catch them young. We go to schools, we go to communities, we talk to people, because it's our responsibility. You might think it doesn't concern me. After all, I know my status, I know what it is, but it affects you when the next person has all of
it. Even affects everything, because if you have an employee that has sickle cell, like I was saying that I had a roommate who had sickle cell, for example, and when she had a crisis, yes, we'll take her to the hospital, but the roommates, we all had to rotate to,
it affects
it affects you.
Okay, there was something you said, when we were answering that first question, and it's very interesting. You talked about experimenting sex with sex, and that there's a lot of it at the moment, because for me, before now, my attention when you're talking about sickle cell is, when people have decided, to get married.
Okay.
So when you talk about experimenting with sex, it's something that people do, whether you want to get married or not. And I never looked at it in that regard. So that's where the advocacy comes. Yes. Because if I've had this myopic, view of sickle cell as you need to check your status when you are about to get married, then there's something wrong.
So the thing again is, we just like to pretend. Nigeria is, I say it everywhere, I have the opportunity to say that Nigeria is a country where we pretend a lot of people are not having sex, but we make babies like rabbits. Exactly. How is it coming from? You look at somebody, so this person is not having sex, but they're making babies. And I'm more concerned about the young ones. When you are with...
They're not married, but they're having babies.
They know much more than you think.
Oh,
they know much more than... So we are like... I don't want to say we, because I'm a millennial. These are like Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We are like in between them. We are like the analog people. They are the digital people. They know so much more than you think they know. They have access to these resources, and we need to help them make informed decisions. They are experimenting because... So before now, we think that people only... Nobody will ever plan to give birth to a child that has sickle cell, because even the mothers go through the trauma more. Yeah. They are the ones that have to leave almost everything they are doing to attend to that child. And what is worse is how some of these children do not even survive, because they cannot afford this healthcare. So why nurse a child till about... I'm not saying sickle cell, we call them warriors, do not survive. They do survive, but that is with extra care. But why should we go through all that trauma? Our healthcare system is out of pocket. I keep saying it. I remember when I went to Unilag to take a second degree, we lost a colleague of ours, 400 level, law students, somebody that was doing amazing. And she because once they have crisis, people do not even look at other things. For Imola, it turned out that she had fluid in her lungs. It was something else. And the moment somebody with SS, on their file, you just see it, HBSS. So the moment they come, they assume that it is crisis. It is the crisis. And it could be something else that is wrong with them. And they just put all that. They even gaslight them. and make them feel like, oh, you're always sickly, the stigma. Some of them don't even want to talk when they have issues because it looks like, oh, they've come again.
Yeah.
Oh, the kind of stigma they go through, the kind of trauma, it's not worth it. And I think no parent really wants to go through all this stress.
So let's talk solutions now. What are the things we need to do? Has the media, has individuals, has communities, even has religious bodies? What are the solutions you prefer? Maybe you should just project 3.
So thank you so much for the solutions. We are very big on solution, and I will also talk about prevention, which is where we talk about the experiment. We cannot continue to pretend young people are not having sex. Talk to them, let them know the implication of what they are doing, and so they can also watch out. From contraceptives, if you're not ready. So genotype and genotype is still something very good. Let's talk about the risk factor. We cannot pretend that these young people do not know what they are doing, or a lot of them. I don't want to. It's not like we're encouraging abortion because it is not legal in Nigeria, and our laws do not even make it easy for us. Our laws do not make it easy because a young person cannot walk into a clinic to procure abortion. But this same law says that children emergencies from badly done abortions can come and be attended to, be evacuated. You want to say, but how many of them make it back to the hospital? Yeah. So this is where prevention comes in. You will not even need an abortion if you have access to contraceptives. Okay. So let's talk about prevention. Let's talk about most of these young people, when it happens, they realize that sex is not what they thought it was. Yes. So once they have the education, they will rather wait. They make informed decision and say, I'm not ready for this. Okay. Now, for those who are also ready, how many of them are having their test? Because the truth is, a lot of people will tell you, I actually had my test, but this lab said I was AA or I was AS, and it turned out this. So you can see that we have medical negligence in this part of the world. Sure. We have medical negligence, and that's why we tell people, check. The tip for this year was building and strengthening communities, sickle cell communities, and then normalizing testing. So what that means is you can test as infant, as you grow older, you check. Okay. But because people do not really go to the hospitals too, for me,
it's not a once for life.
It should not be, looking at the medical negligence that we have in this country. So let it not be a one-off thing because of the medical negligence. If it was where things are working, because people will tell you that I did my test, and when I did it, I was AS. Now, how come you are SC? It's not just even AS. We have SC, which is another variant. Okay. So imagine AS and SC getting married. That's like double jeopardy, because what they will have is either AC or SS, or they will be having SC. Like, look at that.
So what's the comfort zone? What's just
the comfort zone is just once you know your status. If you are AS, regardless, love is not wicked. Regardless of how far the relationship has gone through, you just cut it off. You are deliberate about it.
So AS marries AA.
AS marries AA. That's right.
AA is the
AC is like
AA goes with everybody.
Yes. AA goes with everybody.
Okay.
AA goes with everybody. AS definitely cannot marry AS because the chances of SS is high.
Yeah.
Now, I also talked about I was having AC, SC. So you see all those variants of sickle cell, none of them should go. Just make sure that if you're falling between any of the lines, you stick to the AA. And when we now also talk about that, we still have the risk factor thing there, not just the genotype, the O positive. You will hear some people that say, oh, this person had an abortion as a child. That's why she's not having, that's why she cannot give birth. She's been married for years, looking for the fruit of the womb, going from one prayer to the other. Sometimes it's not really it. Some people have maybe miscarriages. It could have even been from marriage, but because they do not know what the risk factor compatibility is, they did not get the information. So we need more counseling. We need more testing. And also, I think another important thing is the stigma. Because while people do not also declare their statuses because you feel like AA is the hot cake. Yes. I started saying I was AA before I even did my test. Like, I started saying I was AA because once everybody tells you that AA is like the acceptable thing. Everybody is claiming it because Yorubas, I'm happy that you Yorubas say Enitan, you just want the good one for yourself. Yes. You want to live in denial.
So even if that wasn't it, you're claiming it.
And when you even get, a lot of people take their results to the prayer houses, they go to mountains, they go and pray to revert it. So once we no longer stigmatize these people and regularize to say, it's not your fault, it's not good, but how do we make sure that we save the generation next?
Okay, so because of time, I directly said more about time. So let's focus. I'm concerned about religious houses, and this is why. During the week, I saw, and I wanted to mention that during the intro, I saw a video that was so shameful for me. A pastor was talking about how, fibroids is the fact that women are sleeping around and then the babies they're having babies, and then the babies are the ones that is, because when they bring out the fibroid, if you look at it, they look like mini babies. It was just horrible. The fantastic thing though was that there was a fertility expert, probably we won't try and bring out the show, who was saying, of course, this is not true. Everybody knows that even a virgin, has fibroids, and fibroids are particularly, common with African women. Yes. So what now, especially when we talked about religious houses and taking your the
Your
reso
results.
factor, especially because
Yes.
guess what? As educated as I am, I only heard about that reso factor. I think after, because when like you said, I had done my genotype and
Yeah.
when I was like, oh, I knew my genotype and everything. So it was later, I think at some point when I'd gone to the hospital or something, and I said, reso what? I didn't know what reso factor is. But I feel like if we take it to the religious houses where they go and where all these miracles and magic happen and it gets proper education.
Miracles and magic.
And maybe if we hear the pastors actually talking about it beyond those their messages, do you feel like this will make a great impact on
Absolutely,
us?
absolutely, because we're a very religious nation. We're a nation where even when we've had people, we work with vulnerable people and people, we've had people that have tested positive. I have somebody who was managing cancer and the person says, oh, my pastor says I shouldn't use this. My pastor believes. There are people that will just tell you, my religion does not do this. So if the religious houses would support us on this quest, and we've been doing that. Part of the strategy has been working with religious houses and making them understand the implication, training these pastors to say that that what you say, pastors, imams, afars, we don't want, even traditionalists, we don't want to make it look as if it is just a pastor thing.
Yes.
If a lot of people listen to their religious leaders, if you want to get the message to people, just take it to those they respect. So we normalize having this kind of symposium and trainings for these religious bodies. That's the strategy family planning has used. And of course, it's encompassing. When we say comprehensive sexuality education, it's encompassing. It's not just talking about, it's talking about the risk factors that are involved in not having this knowledge. So we work with religious bodies and making them understand that if you have a congregation that is strong, you were talking about Auntie Ellen and then saying she's talking like somebody abroad. You see, abroad, people do not really pray as much as we pray here. Yeah. They have systems that work. They have things that work. We are still dealing with this in Africa. SS and all of us is like a tropical thing because we have not gotten a hang of it. Over there, they don't have these things because these are regularized and normalized.
And sadly, it's not something you can take with like a vaccine like polio to
That's where
eradicate
I was going to get
so
to.
We have research going on, and of course, it's not the solution. The solution we have now, it's just like somebody who has asthma.
Can it be cured?
No, there's no cure
Once
at
you
the
have
moment.
it.
You could have some kind of stem cell therapy and other things, but they are really expensive. People that can barely feed, people that are living below $1 a day, how do they afford all these
Even people that are working
things?
at any salary, how much are you going to be able to
So
spend
how do you,
stem cell
but for
therapy?
something that is avoidable, that's my pain.
Just
like, I
avoid
mean,
it.
this is avoidable with information. So why are you doing it? Why are you testing God? Why are you trying to just, it's not worth it.
Maybe if you haven't experienced it, you don't know the severity of it. So
But there are
in
people
a
that have
minute,
experienced it.
in
There
a
are people
minute,
that have
can you
the-
share with us the challenges of a sickle cell sufferer in just a minute?
Okay, so I have a couple of people I support with sickle cell, and then, so you can imagine being dehydrated. You need water every time. You need supplements from zinc, vitamins. People that have not finished eating, how are they able to afford all this? And these things are really, really expensive. I can also talk about the having crisis as a sickle cell person. While in Unilag, I was on the medical list, so we had sickle cell people in our room. They always had this kind of attention for them and all. So just imagine waking up, you were fine 1 minute and the next, joint pains in your bone, pain all over your body. And this happens regularly. It could happen at any point in time. This is why they call them
of the day.
That's why they call them Ogbanje, because you see somebody 1 minute you're fine jumping and the next you're out. Anything could trigger it. It could be cold, it could be anything at all, and you will have full-blown crisis. You do not even know if that person will survive or not. The kind of excruciating pains that these people also go through, no mother would. Even you as a parent, you start to feel guilty, like, what have I done? What have I done to this child?
Okay, we're run out of time. Thank you, Enitan. You're so passionate, and I like, I like that you have this passion. I pray that this awareness, we as media organization, religious bodies, health centers, everybody continues to push towards, creating.
We need all hands on deck, and that's one of the reasons why the UN keep on doing this advocacy and then commemorative days. Yes. So if the media can keep on spotlighting, and I also think it's important to support those who are currently living with this. Once they know that they are not alone, I mean, it makes the journey easier. It makes the journey easier, and then we'll find a solution to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're not a medical practitioner.
Oh no, but
passion, passion.
Well yes, done. Because sometimes you don't need the doctors telling you about the technical, genetics. So those things are a bit complicated.
You made it so practical.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. Well done.
Okay, moving on. We'll take a very quick break. When we return, our next guest will be here with us. Stay with us.